So I am joined by Vivek Kaul and Omkar Deshpande of the Young Socratics, and they are currently developing Odyssey. So thank you both for agreeing to talk with us a little bit today.
Thanks a lot.
Okay,
Thanks a
thanks
lot.
a lot.
Um, to begin, why don't you give us a brief pitch for Odyssey? What is it, if people haven't heard of it, and why should they be interested?
So, Odyssey is a new kind of experience in science education where we bring together the experience of gaming and the experience of storytelling with a very specific approach to science education, which we call a historical philosophical approach. So, we really bring these three elements together: a historical philosophical approach to science education, storytelling, and gaming. And we think that it's a new way to learn science, and we believe that it has the potential to teach scientific concepts more deeply than a traditional textbook or even other educational games. If you look at how educational games typically approach education, which is basically normally they just patch on a story superficially on the top, but we think we've gone much deeper than that.
Yeah, that's certainly how it appears from all the media you've put out about Odyssey, and that really was kind of the first thing I wanted to talk about. Was at the end of your trailer, you've got these three concepts coming together of as you said, gaming, storytelling, and science education. Um, First and foremost, I wanted to ask what your motivations of for doing this were. Kind of where the impetus to combine these three concepts together in one came from.
Well, our original motivation was to teach science in a deeper way after having first understood science ourselves in a deeper way. So we felt in our experience, both while doing our PhDs and also reading about science later on as we worked in the technology industry, we found that we got a better understanding of the ideas underlying science by looking at how those ideas were invented in their historical context by the great minds of the past.
Yeah,
So
that's
we
cool.
thought that why not try to present this to children, because a lot of that material we felt lies in graduate level texts on the history of science, but
Hmm.
we felt that it's not hard for a middle schooler or high schooler to understand those ideas. So we started by teaching specific topics in the science and math curriculum in middle school and high school by adopting this approach to kids in our own private classes as well as at Stanford Splash. Stanford has some programs for school age kids. So we found that many of the kids appreciated this a lot more than a traditional approach, and we wanted to build something that can scale. So instead of being confined to 20 or 25 kids in a classroom, we thought we should build something which would enable any child or adult across the world to be able to access this kind of a learning experience and benefit from it. So that's where the idea of a game then came from, that the material, the story of science is already very fascinating, but if we can present it in the context of an immersive game
Hmm.
with a proper storyline, uh, we would hopefully increase the engagement many-fold by that, by bringing these three elements together, which are independently engaging, but when combined together to form an experience, a unique experience,
Yeah.
hopefully that experience would be many-fold engaging. So that's how.
Sorry.
No, that's all
Uh,
right.
I think there was, yeah. Uh, okay. So also
Okay.
initially, like he said, we were targeting students, and once we went to our Kickstarter and Steam Greenlight specifically, then we saw that a lot of adults who like science and gaming. So there's like a lot of people consume these things like Brian Greene's show or Carl Sagan. Like people like
Hmm.
science in general, and if you actually had a first pass of science education in your childhood, then this material will still be very fascinating because it's not covered in the same way as you are taught in school.
Sure.
So we saw that many people who like gaming and science as adults are interested in our games. So initially, obviously, we started off as looking at the game for middle school students, but now we see it as a game that a broader audience can enjoy. That's
Mm,
what we feel at this point.
Yeah, and a
perfect.
lot of the material, the science content in the game is based on the original writings of the philosophers as well as monographs by historians of science. So it's not based on school texts, while at the same time being hopefully easy enough for a school-going child to be able to understand in middle school or high school.
Cool. One of the things I have always kind of discussed when talking with people making games that are either educational or approaching topics in a way to educate people that are playing the game is the balance between instructing somebody and making a good game. If you do both, you're going to have a great product, but if you fail to do either one, you're not necessarily going to meet your goals. So, how are you balancing those 2 points? You've obviously taken a great deal of care in approaching these 3 points, but how do you keep them balanced? Is there a way that you approach the different puzzles in the game to make sure that they're teaching enough while still being fun, or is it kind of something from conceptually that you start with before you even start building things in game?
Yeah, so the approach we have taken is we start off assuming that the player that has no background in science. So we start from pretty much a blank slate, and the game is divided into a series of you can say chunks,
Hmm.
and in each chunk you are taught a little bit of the science content, and then you're asked to apply that content on on one or two science puzzles that you find within that local environment of the game. And the science content is also not taught in an instructional way. It's taught through the words of this 13-year-old girl Kai, as because she is recording her own experience of learning science in this way. So we want to capture that experience and put it in the words of a 13-year-old girl who's not instructing anybody. She's just recording what in some sense, she's instructing herself,
Hmm.
recording her own experiences. So the reader is going to find that the content it will be presented within the story of the game. So she's recording the events that are happening on the island. So there's story within which the content she's learning is embedded. So it's a very friendly way we think of learning science within a story, and then we don't. So as I said, the whole game is divided into chunks. So in each section, you're only you have to read. You have to read her journal, but you read only a few pages at a time,
Hmm.
and then it's only when you solve the next puzzle that you get access to the next fragment that she's written.
Gotcha.
And without solving that puzzle, you can't get access to the next part of the islands. So um, there's the progression in the game mirrors the progression in the science concepts and the progression in the story as well, because that's how we've designed it.
Mm, that's cool. So every single part is layering against those three concepts: the gaming and the storytelling and the science education. That's
Yeah.
Yeah.
that's neat. Um, you mentioned the different areas of the game and the different parts that are all different segmented, and the islands that Odyssey takes place on. And I wanted to ask why you picked that location. You know, this location of the Caribbean islands, this backdrop of a shipwrecked family and treasure, and pirates in kind of a modern setting. Um, was there a specific kind of goal in picking that setting, or a reason that you went that route?
So we wanted an environment where the player does not have access. Uh, the player should not be able to just walk to any arbitrary part of that environment. So the environment had to be constrained
Hmm.
in some way. And we thought a group of islands would be the most natural way to constrain the geographical terrain so that you can get the player to walk through, the environment in the order you want. And at the same time, we didn't choose something like we could have chosen maybe an underground passage or something or an underground maze. We wanted it to be natural.
Hmm.
Uh, so the environment has to be aesthetically pleasing so that when the player is learning about science in that environment, it's like sitting out in a on a beautiful island and reading science. So you want
Right.
that an experience.
And also because we were teaching science and not, it's I mean, there is fiction, but we wanted to keep it realistic. It's because we have seen some games in which they introduce a lot of fictional elements which compromise the science itself. Some things are happening which is not believable, or something you can create an alien environment or something and teach science. But here we want to keep it like real, like very realistically. There is fiction, but it's like kind of realistic fiction, uh, not like trying to make it like believable, and not compromising with
Mm.
science.
Yeah. And the island environment is, I would say, part of the first game. So if we continue to make, more games beyond this, then we will certainly experiment with other kinds of environments.
Cool.
But it had to be constrained so that we allow that progression to be, to be mandatory. You can't access an arbitrary part of the environment. The progression has to be linear,
Mm.
just like the science concepts.
Makes a lot of sense, and it's very clear that you've kind of thought through all these angles with an eye towards this being an educational experience. It's cool to see how much thought you've put into it. Kind of shifting gears from talking about Odyssey to learning a little bit more about you guys. What is your background? Clearly, you've been involved in education and in science, but have you been involved in game development, or is that something new to you?
No, game development was something new to us.
Hmm.
So, in that sense, we are newcomers
Hmm.
to the gaming industry. Um, I had played games like Myst in the late 90s. So, I had, and Vivek had played some games as well. So, we had some limited exposure to games, immersive games in particular. But we are really, starting out afresh in attempting this. Although we did get a lot of help from experienced people like Eric Lindstrom, for example,
Hmm.
who liked our project so much that he decided to take out time to work with us on this. And also Jason Miller, who's also a very experienced game developer. So we were lucky to find great people like them who are experienced in the gaming industry um, to work with us.
Perfect.
Um, yeah.
Yeah, what are your guys' backgrounds in science?
So we have a similar background. So we did our undergraduation in India at the Indian Institute of Technology, and then we came here to the US to do our masters and PhD. So I did my masters and PhD from Stanford, and even though I was in computer science, my research was basically in science. I was working on human evolutionary genetics, and it was during that time that I realized how little I really understood.
Hmm.
There were all kinds of disciplines like archaeology, historical linguistics, evolution, genetics, which we had very little or no exposure to in our undergraduation. So we spent a lot of time studying science and also the history of science and history of mathematics, both during our PhDs as well as um, during the years following our PhD, where we worked in the technology industry. And we feel that our heart has always been in, you know, in trying to address our curiosity about the ultimate questions underlying the universe. And we feel that if kids and adults alike were spent more time grappling with some of the biggest questions in philosophy and about the universe, then that would provide the best kind of motivation to study science and math. So um, that's what we believed, and so we wanted to bring that same experience in creating this product.
So yeah, like he said, I also did my PhD in Georgia Tech actually, and I was in computer engineering. So and I have done aerospace engineering and mathematics also as a master. So I was actually exploring different things historically and trying to learn things during the PhD time. And after that, we worked in the tech industry. I was working at Facebook, and he was working at a startup which got acquired by Walmart. But we were on the side trying to always work on in the education space through classes and other things. And we left our jobs at the point that we thought that there is too much of shift between our jobs and dedicating ourselves to this game. And that's why we had to leave our job, and we then invested like put in our savings also to for this game. Uh, so yeah, it has been a very fascinating experience because obviously initially we were not aware of the details in the game industry, what could be done and what could not be done. But luckily, as he said, we found many people who actually were willing to work with us, and even now we keep on getting new people, like for music and other things. They approach us automatically after the Kickstarter, especially actually, because Kickstarter was done to get the initial PR so that people are aware of our game.
Perfect.
Yeah. It's
You
hard for us to know how to pitch it exactly because we think it's a very unique game. So if somebody says, how is this game similar? Like, what is the other game which is similar to this? We believe it's kind of unique. So, if I
absolutely.
say one particular game, then it will be like it will not do justice to this game, actually, right?
Sure. You had mentioned that Myst, particularly, was a game you played when you were younger. That was an inspiration, and I can very clearly see that connection with Odyssey. Were there any other games that served as inspirations for you creating this game?
So, as I said, since we were newcomers to the gaming industry, we hadn't played many games. Myst was one of them. Um, but so there was another, game that I played on the iPad. It was called The Lost City. It's a very simple game, but again in the same genre, I would say. And then there was Dear Esther, which does a good job of storytelling. So, as far as creating the environment of the game was concerned, and games like these were provided some kind of inspiration for us. Um, but as you know, that's only one of those three sets.
Of course,
Uh,
yeah.
for storytelling and for science education, we had to basically chalk our own path because even though Myst has a storyline, it was still a fantasy world, and we couldn't really see ourselves making a fantasy world if you're trying to teach science because we had to, make everything look realistic and
Sure.
sound realistic. So,
And the puzzles generally on all the games are logic puzzles. These ones are like very uniquely crafted basically because they are emerging from the science content. So, so in that way, it's very, very different. The kind of puzzles in this game are, uh,
yeah, for Dear Esther, for example, we read that some people won't even consider it a game. So, I'm we think that we might get comments like that also because ultimately it's a science education experience. There is gaming in it, but we wouldn't look at it as just a game.
Right.
We look at it, so gaming is like one of the three components as you saw in the Venn diagram we had. Um,
Yeah, absolutely.
there is
To
like the reading is involved in fragments here in this game, which is not the case that much in other games. Uh, like you have a journal, which is an integral part of the journey, like which is divided into separate fragments, which go along with the puzzle. So each fragment is connected with the puzzle you are actually going to solve in that surrounding.
Right, perfect. To kind of just bring this to a close, since you've been exposed to the world of crowdfunding and game development, are there any other projects out there, particularly from an educational point of view, that you have run into that you think are doing something particularly innovative or cool?
Uh, there was one thing which has not yet emerged called Explore Planet 3. I don't know how it will turn out to be because it has not really been released for public usage. I mean, they are trying to use it for school, but that is one thing which we looked at. But math games were there. Like, actually, we went into science, but there were some math games like.
like for example, Elements. There's this, I think, a company called We Want to Know. They have games like Dragon Box for algebra and Elements for teaching geometry. Um, we
Motion math.
we looked at that. We looked at motion math. Um, yeah, but from our perspective, so those games are they are games, but they are much more on the education side.
Hmm.
And so we look at them more as gamified,
Questions.
yeah, gamified questions. In some,
Mm.
I mean, they're good. I mean, I've played through Elements. My son has played through it, and I think it's a great way to teach math. But for science, we felt that we need a much more we need a story-driven game, because ultimately science has been developed in pursuit of answering big questions. So unless we get the audience to grapple with those big questions themselves, it would be very hard to make them understand the scientific ideas in their original context. And I would say the same thing about math as well. We initially planned to make when we started out, we thought we would make a game on the history of math. But it so happened that we thought that since there are math games already out there, let's try science first before um, going on the math side. And we also believe that science and math have to be learned together. So we didn't really want to make a separate game on math. If we continue making more games, we would actually incorporate the math while teaching the science. And the way both of them co-evolved historically.
Makes a ton of sense, and it's really interesting to see how you have approached connecting these three different parts of science education, storytelling, and gaming in this in Odyssey. So Vivek Kaul and Omkar Deshpande, thank you so much for sharing a little bit about your background and your thought process in designing Odyssey. And people can find more information about the game and where they can get it in the description below.